Welcome to the students of class 10, parents, teachers and other viewers. Today you are in social science class. You know that social sciences constitute many subjects: economics, history, geography, political science, commerce, psychology and many others. Among all the social sciences, economics is treated as queen of the social sciences. Given the importance, Indian school curriculum introduces economics from class 6 onwards. During 6 to 8, some rudimentary forms of economics is introduced. In classes 9th and 10th, some important economic concepts, events and processes which are faced by we all in different ways are introduced. In the previous two sessions, dealing with the chapter Money and Credit, we discussed about what is money, what money does, how people exchanged before money came into being. We also come to know that how money is defined in recent times. Today, we are going to discuss about another important institution called banks. Why banks are important? Look at the screen. You remember that what is this? Making payment through QR code. So the many companies that you are seeing here which are accepting or helping you to buy and sell through digital modes like Paytm, GPay, PhonePe, BIM and many others, they can do this work only when you have a bank account. So the banks have become an important component in our lives. That is the reason in recent times banks themselves allow young students also to open account, savings account. In the last session, I also introduced to the monetary system. What is this Indian monetary system? Let me recap some important ideas that India follows paper currency standard. The currencies made of paper is used as a major monetary instrument for buying and selling for all the financial transactions. Our monetary system is governed by the Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India does many things like printing currencies, regulating all the banks. We also have other kind of financial institutions like commercial banks. Ministry of Finance is the highest fiscal authority in our monetary system. You will know more about financial institutions when you are going to class 11 and 12. You remember that I raised some questions and you are required to do true or false. In that set of 10 questions, I am sure you may not be having a very correct, confident answer for 2 questions. Can you recall those questions? Let me read out for you. Question number 3. Credit cards are one form of money. True or false? Question number 4. Check slips without signature can be used as money. True or false? Though I did not explain in the last sessions, but I raised this question because so that you will be more aware that this is the issue that we need to discuss. This is what we are going to discuss now and in the next few sessions. Credit cards are generally, people treat that this is a kind of money. You just go and buy whatever you wanted actually. But in reality, credit cards are not money. It is an instrument for buying things on credit. Even if you have a bank account or if you have bank balances also, credit cards cannot be considered as form of money because when you are using the credit card, you are guaranteeing the person who is selling you that the credit companies will pay you the money instantly and you will be paying them when you get time, when you get money. That is why you get the bills. Many of your parents may be having credit cards. They may be making payment once in a month. That may be from the banks or by depositing cash or various means actually. So credit cards are not money, it is an instrument of credit, an instrument used to borrow. Check slips without signature can be used as money. No. I am going to discuss with you what is the check slips when we talk about banks, how banks function actually. Okay. So check slips without signature cannot be used as money. Even the check slips cannot be treated as money because unless you have a money in your bank, you are not supposed to issue checks. You will be landing into legal trouble. Police may come and pick you up. It is against the law to use check slips without having sufficient balance in your account for a common person. It's also possible for some people, about which we are going to discuss in this session. What is a bank actually? How many of you have visited bank? Can you raise your hands? I'm sure when you are watching this video, you must be very eager to raise your hands, and some of you must be already having an account. What banks do? Banks do two things mainly. It accepts deposits and it lends. People can borrow from banks. Lending is an activity that the banks can give you a loan. You are in class 10 now. We are introducing you to many economic terms. You need to recognize and take note of these terms. So the lending is an activity of giving loan by the bank. But there are many conditions. So bank means some institution which is also receiving deposits and also lending. There is a law in India, it's called Indian Banking Regulation Act, 1949. It defines an activity of the bank. Let me read out for you. Accepting for the purpose of lending, listen carefully, accepting for the purpose of lending or investing of deposits of money from the public, repayable on demand or otherwise, and withdrawable by check, draft, order or otherwise. You see the flexibility in this definition. So by now you will understand that you must have seen in the banks how they operate, who are the counters, the various counters that are there. They may be also running ATM counters, they may be having net banking facilities. So in our view, a bank can be characterized in three means. One is that they accept deposits. A bank has to accept deposits from the public. Second, banks use these deposits for lending to others, or they themselves may invest in other means. You may be learning at a higher class that there is something called stock markets, there is called money markets, So banks also can go invest in some other company. And banks are also mainly involved in creation of money or credit creation. You may be wondering, what is this credit creation? Where is the creation takes place? People just deposit the money and then the banks lend it. Let me ask you one question. Can you consider post office a bank? Yes or no? Yeah, correct. No. Why? Because the post offices, they may receive deposits, but they cannot lend. They cannot go and invest in any other companies. That is why generally post offices, people may save. They may be having savings bank account or recurring bank account, various kind of deposits. But they cannot be considered as bank because they are not lending to, they are not engaged in lending activity. They are not engaged in investment activity. That is why post offices are not considered as a bank. Let me come back to the characteristics of bank. What is this credit creation means? Look at the screen. There is a chart here. I am giving you with the example of a State Bank of India. So what it does, if you look at the diagram, it's clear that depositors like me or your parents or you yourselves, you deposit money in the State Bank of India or any other bank, and the State Bank of India giving it to the diagram, like flow diagram shows on the right hand side, it may be giving to shopkeepers, big traders, professionals, industrialists, or even consumers. And then consumer, all these borrowers, they will repay the amount with something called interest, an additional amount. And then when we deposit money in a bank, banks also give us some additional amount other than the deposit. That's called interest. So additional payment because you sacrificed your consumption and you are depositing in the bank. So for your sacrifice, there is an incentive that is given by the bank. Banks, they lend it to depositors and borrowers or whoever is wanting, and those who borrowed from banks, they have to give it back to the bank apart from the deposit money, the principal. That's called principal. That interest payment is more than what the banks will give you as a depositor. We'll discuss more what is the interest rate prevailing, but generally from the borrowers, banks charge more interest, but when it pays to the depositors, it gives less amount of interest. So the difference between the interest paid for you and the interest received from the borrower, that's called the profit. That's how banks earn a lot of profits. You must be seeing in the newspaper how banks earn profits. So in that way, it's a company, it's an enterprise. All the banks are enterprises making profits. At times, banks are also incur losses, about which you will be learning in higher classes. Let me describe how the credit creation takes place in a bank. Banks create money and banks create credit. I'm a person, I'm something called primary depositor. You can look at the table in the screen. I deposit 1 lakh rupees in a bank. You know that I already told you that Reserve Bank of India is the major regulator of the bank. So they will direct what the bank should do, how the banks should run actually. So the Reserve Bank of India will tell the bank that please keep 10% of the amount as cash reserve. So out of my 1 lakh rupees, banks what they will do, they will keep 10,000 rupees as a cash reserve, 10% of my deposit. And then they will lend it to, how much is the excess money they will be having? 90,000 rupees. They will lend it to many borrowers. Those borrowers, what they will do, they will buy things, they will use their checkbooks. And they will use it for production purposes and many other purposes. They may be going and buying raw materials, they may be paying for laborers and for various activities. and those who have got that money through checks or whatever the means, they will come back and they will put the money again in the bank. So look at the first stage. From 1 lakh, 10,000 rupees is kept as a cash reserve, 90,000 is excess cash, and that is being loaned to the individuals, borrowers. But that 90,000 again come back to the bank. It may be in the form of savings. So this 90,000 again coming back to the bank, and banks what they do, they will record all these transactions in the registered, their own registers. And out of this, already they received 1 lakh rupees cash from me, but they also received 90,000 in addition from other people actually. That is my money only, but they received from other people. These are recorded in the registers. So from 90,000 rupees, what they will do, they will keep 9,000 because 10% is the cash reserve as directed by the RBI. 9,000 they will keep, and then what is the rest of the amount which they may be having in excess? 81,000. That 81,000 again they will lend it to borrowers. And those borrowers again they will use, they will invest, they will buy, they will procure, they will produce goods and services, they will spend the money. That money, that cash amount or the checks, they will come back again to the bank only. Again bank will register, and then out of 81,000 rupees, it will keep 8,100 rupees as reserve, and the rest of the amount will be loaned to the other borrowers. So like that, what banks do, they will receive deposits and they will lend it to many people. So let me assume 10 stages. Last stage, you see how much deposits bank has received. It did not create any money. It received from me and it has lent to other people, and other people again come back deposited in the bank actually. So from 1 lakh rupees, it has created at the last stage how much deposits? 10 lakh rupees. So that's from 1 lakh it becomes 10 lakh. That's the total amount a bank can create if the cash reserve ratio is 10%. You can imagine if one person with 1 lakh rupees, banks can create this much money as deposits. When there are thousands of people, lakhs of people, crores of people all over the world, when they go and deposit money, their savings in the bank, how much banks can create, how much deposits bank can create. So this is how banks multiplies. So that depends on how much money again come back to bank from the borrowers. It also depends on how much the cash reserve the RBI is directing them. If the cash reserve ratio is more, then you will have to keep a lot of money in cash. If the CRR, let me assume the technical term called cash reserve ratio, CR. So if it is more, the money that is deposited or the credit creation will be less. If it is less, you create more money. For that, one small definition or technical term you can understand, something called deposit multiplier. What is this deposit multiplier? An equation for that is, look at the screen. The deposit multiplier equation is K equal to 1 by R. What is this K? Deposit multiplier. What is the R? Cash reserve ratio. What is the AC? Additional cash. How much it is able to develop actually. Okay. Suppose you have something called 10,000 rupees. Let me write here 10,000 rupees. And the cash reserve ratio is about say 20%. Okay, how much is 20%? Okay, so what is the deposit multiplier here? 1 by 20%. That is equal to 1 by 20 by 100. You will get 100 by 20 equal to 5. So the total additional cash, how much you will get? If you deposit 10,000 rupees, If the cash reserve ratio is say 20%, how much additional deposit will be created? 5 into 10,000, 50,000. So 5,000, like 10,000 will become 50,000. Let me give you one example for you to calculate. If there is a deposit of say 20,000, if it is a cash reserve ratio is 5%, what is the additional cash or additional credit creation? You just calculate and check for yourself. You can show it to your teacher or parents. So how much money this 20,000 has created if the cash reserve ratio is 5%? You may be interested to know why I am doing all these calculations. What is the purpose of doing this? What does credit creation implies? It implies that banks lent many times more than the deposit it has mobilized from people. I already explained to you in the table how the 10,000 rupee, 1 lakh rupee become 10 lakh rupees. Second implication, they earn from our savings, people's deposits. At the same time, encourage us to save because they give some interest for us. Third, banks help anyone who comes with a productive work plan and seek loan. People may be having innovative ideas that make our life better, but they may not be having money. So the banks provide loans to such people for investment purposes. That means you can really understand how the banks help us in our own improving our own life standards. Let me have a test for you. You can answer true or false. You can also add one more thing, not sure. Let me read out the question for you. Post office located in my area is one example of a bank. True or false? Statement number 2. Only those organizations which engaged in receiving deposits can be considered as a bank. True or false? Statement 3. The amount of money which should be kept as cash reserve determines the creation of additional money within the bank. True or false? If the cash reserve ratio is 20%, initial deposit is 20,000, what is the additional aggregate deposit? The answers are 4. You can choose one. Today we introduced you to the bank, what is meant by a bank, how banks create credit or money. In the next section, we will discuss more about what are the other functions of money, how they help in meeting the credit requirements of people. Thank you.